Hey, all, welcome to the Military Wire. This is a special edition of the Military Wire where we do our Vision 2020 speaker series, Live on Purpose, where we're still interviewing some of America's most elite men and women who have served this country. We share their stories of overcoming their journey of really kind of tackling tough issues and getting back on top. And I got to tell you that I'm super excited about today's guest, Dan Goldenberg. I've had Dan, for those of you who know, I've had Dan on the show a couple times. He's the executive director of Call of Duty Endowment, but Navy veteran, 27 years, right, Dan? I think it is.
Yeah.
27 years. God bless you, my friend. So, Harvard grad, and you guys put out a great report last year with ZipRecruiter on veteran underemployment. We're going to unpack that today as well on this show. But Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me again. It's a real honor.
Yeah, no, I love having you on, Dan, and I think it's even so important now to discuss what we're going to be discussing. And I know you came out with an article, and I want to be sure I get this right. You posted on LinkedIn, and it was that how oftentimes our states overlook veteran talent, the skills, the ability that we bring to the marketplace, especially fighting crisis like COVID when that launched, specifically the pandemic. But why do you think states kind of overlook talent in their backyard?
Yeah, great question, Mike. I think you have to ask yourself, why is there a market inefficiency? Why is there both a supply of skilled workers and a demand for their services, yet somehow they're not getting hired, especially in a time of crisis like we're in the midst of, and when so many of the specialties that veterans bring to the table are in demand. If you look at the most unemployed MOSs, military occupational specialties from the Army, Soldier for Life did a great report showing that. And those it's in my LinkedIn piece, but those included MOSs like obviously medic, logisticians, mechanics, truck drivers. These are all specialty areas again that are in high demand, yet somehow there's a gap. And I think at a high level, there's a couple explanations. One, and I've had some very senior folks tell me this, I'll call these hypotheses, but there may be vested interest in states to ensure their current approach really isn't changed. So that might be maintaining lucrative state revenue for training or certification programs, or could be job protection from interest groups or educational institutions that are vested in the system as it currently exists. These are just working hypotheses. But just as importantly, I think that the civilian sector still doesn't truly recognize the value of military training and experience. And I think the most vivid example of that is the Comfort and the Mercy. So they pull in, these Navy hospital ships, staff brimming with, hospital corpsmen, Navy's medic. They pull into New York and LA, and they are seen as absolutely 100% valid treatment facilities for the civilian population, no questions asked, right? But a couple of weeks later, one of those corpsmen can take off their uniform, be a civilian, and they now have zero medical standing in the civilian medical community. What's right? The body doesn't change when you step off the base. Doesn't change when you step across state lines. Every medic and corpsman in the U.S. military should, as a bare minimum, be able to test into being an EMT immediately. They should be able to take a civilian test and immediately be certified if they pass. It's a fair, objective standard. Hasn't happened. Certainly not in most states. So I think overall, there's still the civilian-military divide that prevents our regulatory bodies at the state level, our legislatures, our employers from recognizing military training experience as truly carrying over to the civilian world. That's just, I think there's things DOD could do to make it easier. There are some experiments going on within the Army to give folks certification opportunities. But part of it's on that supply side, sure, of getting our folks the paperwork they need. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the civilian sector as well for getting rid of the red tape. There's no reason why, for medics, as an example, we can't have a national standard.
Agreed.
Medics should be able to get to work as an EMT as soon as they leave the service, if they so choose to do so. We know that about half of them, statistically, we know about half folks in general across all MOSs want to continue working in their MOSs when they leave. And amongst medics and corpsmen, we know from one of our partners, Hire Heroes USA, 50% of those, of those who want to continue to work in the medical field, 50% of them can't find jobs in this specialty.
Is that right? It's that high?
It's that high. So that's, we're still having, and that's looking across 5 years of data. It's still a huge problem.
Wow. So, and that is just crazy. That is, what's interesting. So I sit on the board of WGU, Western Governors University, one of their advisors, and, there's a number of folks that are picking the medical field, to go into. Certainly a number of our military and veteran service members too are picking that field to go into, even though that field, we're now seeing massive furloughs, right? Across the board between hospitals and different agencies. And, I think that kind of begs the question. You've long been an advocate of helping companies understand the value of veterans, what we bring to the marketplace, how we can position our talent. You seem to be on the front lines of this issue, even when there's not a pandemic, Dan. And now we've got, I think what your report with ZipRecruiter said, even in the best of times, nearly 1/3 of veteran job seekers are underemployed, right? So now we've got 30 million. I just saw an article. I mean, it's in Time Magazine, right? 36 million by official tallies of people unemployed, right?
Right.
Another 3 million that filed at the first part of May. And so now the talent pool is expanded to a great degree, right? Which likely means that companies will be able to get the best of talent. They'll be able to pay lower wages because there's more to choose from and they can get what they want. I'm surmising here, but how can our veterans, when even in a great economy, they face underemployment, how can they compete against this talent pool that's expanded by 30 million people? How do we do it?
Yeah, I mean, it's what a difference 10 weeks of crisis can make, right?
Right.
We have ostensibly a tight labor market, and now we have the opposite of that. I think it's worth taking a step back and saying, quite simply, veterans have what it takes. But, they have what it takes to be successful in this market. But they have to effectively communicate why their skills are valuable to employers. And that challenge hasn't changed. And it involves a number of steps, having a firm notion of what they want to do within a company. I mean, I can't tell you, this never seems to change. The ethos in the military of, hey, I'm going to step forward, volunteer, do whatever it takes. That's great. It's really not helpful in the recruiting process. So to go up to a recruiter and say, hey, I'm willing to do anything, I just love your company, it's actually not helpful. It's much helpful to say, I want to be in R&D in Des Moines within your company. You need to have a focus, right? But like the I'll do anything ethos, which is great in the military, generally doesn't work when you're looking for a job. You have to have that resume that translates your skills and experience. And that's, we hear about translation a lot, and that's super important about converting what you did, but also making very clear to the employers about why that's valuable to them in their context. And obviously you have to be able to do that in the resume to get the interview, and then in the interview itself, particularly if you come from a military experience that's not easily translatable. Of course, being able to convey that in the conversation during an interview, coming across as likable and relatable, that's on the individual veteran. This can be a lot easier by working with organizations that we support. If anybody needs help, they can go to callofdutyendowment.org and click on veteran support, or callofdutyendowment.org/hire honor, HIRE honor. And we can get them that kind of help, but it's much, much easier if you have someone advising you and helping you through this process. Doesn't cost you a dime. And we know those who go through these our grantees programs are much, much more successful quantitatively. They tend to earn about double the national salary average, and they tend to make roughly 20% more in salary than veterans who don't go through these organizations. There's a number of steps. There's also these incredible relationships that our grantees have with employers. So they know the employers who, quite frankly, they're going to be lower barriers to. They'll not only are they eager to hire veterans, they'll understand you. They have programs you can snap into. They've got the skinny, the gouge, if you will, on the sailor,
Yeah.
where the opportunities are. And, there's nothing more heartbreaking than saying, an infantryman say, I'm just a door kicker. Who would want to be? Because there's so much more, and our grantees can really help them bring that to the surface and be effective in that process. So even though it's a super competitive job market and soon will be, and things will be, continuing to change, there's always room for good candidates. And I think this moment in time is being used by companies who are doing well in this environment or who are stable to say, hey, there's an opportunity to grab great talent here that maybe we didn't have a few weeks ago. So we're going to take advantage of that. You need to position yourself as a veteran to be successful there. And you can be successful. You just need some help.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think there's a couple things that you said that were really important that if people can take and really decipher and pay attention to is, number one, it's not enough just to pick a company and say, hey, I want to work there. You really have to know who you want to be inside that company and then explain the value that you're going to add, right, to that
100%.
company. What problem are you solving? Are you going to enjoy solving that problem? What are the 5 reasons you're going to add value? And does it personally help you move the needle forward? How are you helping them solve their problem? And when you can decipher that and really explain it, communicate it, and that is going to give you an edge. And Dan, I love what you said, because what you're describing is mentorship, which, in the military is really what we had. It's a mentoring program all the way through, right? I mean, we're on a mission,
absolutely.
But we always have somebody that can guide us to the next level. And I think we forget that when we get out. We suddenly think, you know what, I can do it on my own. I got a great LinkedIn profile. I got a great resume, and I'm going to just shotgun approach these jobs. And what you're saying is, wait a second, pick the sources that are going to help you get to where you want to go, because you can make more money doing it and you'll be more successful at it.
Yeah, and what I love about our grantee organizations, our partners, is that they're really into teaching you to fish, not fishing for you. So, while they absolutely see it as important success for the veterans they work with to land that high quality job, they see it as a bigger success if they don't have to come back seeking more help in the future, because they've taught them how to do this properly. And that's the case with the vast majority of the vets they help.
Yeah. So Dan, you guys work with a number of different organizations, veteran organizations, employment organizations, things like that. And, we're seeing these furloughs, we're seeing layoffs. But to your point, there's also companies that are still hiring. There's companies that are cherry picking talent. As a matter of fact, I talked to a recruiter the other day and she said, boy, some of these companies are just using this as an opportunity to get the best talent, which I think is also, that's smart. But we also see the struggle with some of these nonprofits having difficulty raising money. So what do you think is really on the horizon in helping veterans and even organizations navigate this kind of the economic and the mental health issues that are being raised by all this uncertainty? I mean, there's a lot going on here, right? Which is so much uncertainty on one front. Are we going to be able to get funding from an organizational standpoint? Companies saying, hey, we need to grow, but we don't have revenue. Veterans going, man, I'm getting out. And now what the heck? So what do you see is really, what is the key of navigating this whole kind of storm ahead?
Yeah, great questions. A lot to unpack there.
Yeah, I gave you a ton, Dan. I did.
No worries. Let's start with smart companies are doing exactly as the search person you spoke with said. They're seeing this as an opportunity to invest in acquiring great talent. And there's no reason why veterans can't be part of that, and benefit from it.
Yeah.
The economy is going to come back online at some point. It's just going to look different. It's really going to look different. I don't see us, I think a lot of those commercial airliners in the boneyard are probably going to stay in the boneyard for years and years and years till capacity comes back, as one example. People are going to travel less. I don't think that's going to change. I think companies have learned on the business travel front, which is where most of the profit margins are. They've learned, wow, we can conduct a lot of business without putting people on airplanes. So I think that's an industry, as an example, a sector where you got to look and say, look, you always, part of your job hunting calculus should always include looking at the long-term prospects for an industry or a particular company. And I think this brings to the surface the need to do that, right? And say, is this organization going to be strong? Is this industry going to be strong? Not just today, but 3 years, 5 years from now. It's hard to say, but
Yeah.
that has to be part of your assessment. To look at not only where's the opportunity now, but where's it going to be. And also, I think we've seen the best and the worst in companies during this environment as well.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's surfaced some things culturally. There's a big internet company out there right now. I won't say who it is, but or I should say a social media company out there that's been having a lot of conflict with its employees very publicly right now. And I think, you have to ask the question, like, oh boy, look at that culture. Is that a kind of culture I want to be a part of? You just like, these are the kind of things, like crisis brings out the best and worst, not just people, but organizations.
Yeah.
So I think you just have to look at that as part of your assessment of an organization. And there's an opportunity to do that. A lot of cupboards have been opened, a lot of, where we can see how companies really behave in tough times. For the nonprofit fundraising question, things have definitely changed. I think it will require, going forward, a lot more innovation.
Yeah.
To find ways to smartly connect with donors. There are many donors who 10 weeks ago were really involved, but now they're hurting themselves. So, we have to be more thoughtful when we reach out to people asking for their support, when they in fact may now have gone from being supporters to those who need support. Also, at the same time, a lot of the old major fundraising mechanisms don't work. So there's no galas going on, races, even direct mail. People are probably throwing away a lot of mail without opening it because they don't want to touch anything that they don't know the source of. So, all kinds of things in the space have changed. So, we're seeing some more innovative approaches, but there's also donor fatigue going on too. So Trump crisis, there's lots of hands out there, and, the money, I think what we're seeing right now is money that was a few weeks ago going towards, public health related causes are now going to, things around social justice, for instance. So sectors of the nonprofit sector are seeing huge swings in the limited funds that are available. And on top of that, we're seeing this from our grantees, where folks were relying on governments before to provide certain services. Governments are so slammed right now with demand, they can't keep up. So you have this really tough dynamic of a lot of the fundraising sources have been cut off or drastically reduced, while demand for services has drastically increased. So it's a tough environment. And I honestly think, for better or worse, there's going to have to be consolidation in the nonprofit space. Yep. I think inefficient, non-innovative, non-hard driving, non-impact producing nonprofits are going to consolidate or go away. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. The bad thing is if the remaining support doesn't go to the highest impact organizations. So I think it's very important for organizations that are having real measurable social impact to be real clear about that, because the big donors, that's what they're going to be looking at when they have scarce resources and they're deciding where to allocate it.
Well, and I think, and that's so good, Dan. And I know I gave you a ton in that.
I had all your points.
I hit it all in one question, right? Which should have been like 4 questions. But to your point, it's really an opportunity for everybody to rewrite their story, right? Moving forward, like, who do I want to be? How am I going to make impact? Those are probably the 2 critical. And how do I invite people to be a part of making that impact? And if you can clearly communicate that message, I think you'll survive, to your point. And as a veteran who's, job seeking veteran, if you can clearly communicate how you're going to add value and help solve problems, and there's a cultural fit, which I love that you said that. I think that's so important. Sometimes we miss that cultural fit's so important. You've got an opportunity now to really, but get the help doing it. I mean, Dan, you and I could talk hours on this subject. This is a subject that I just love, and I know our viewers kind of have this attention span of about 30 minutes. So I want to be sure that I be true to that. So I want to talk a bit about the success that you guys have had as, Call of Duty Endowment. This 69,000 meaningful jobs that you've placed veterans in over the last 10 years. at about a sixth of the cost of what Department of Labor does, which is pretty significant. And with state budgets and federal budgets and everything else probably going to be, obviously reduced. I know our state has done across the board cuts. I know other states will follow. I'm sure the feds will have to follow to some degree. Yet I think sometimes we still look at government to be the solution oftentimes, right? Well, the government has to fix this. And so what will it take for people to realize that the government isn't the only solution? I mean, you've got data to prove that you guys are extremely impactful, you're efficient, you use dollars better, and yet you're still competing against government entities in many ways. So what's it going to take?
Yeah, well, I think the government is, my personal view is I don't view them as a competitor. I view them as a collaborator. There's certain things that are inherently governmental, right? And there's certain that just the private sector or the charitable sector do better. I happen to believe, and the data shows me that the charitable sector actually does a much better job with addressing this market inefficiency, this gap between the supply of job-ready vets and the companies that want to hire them. We're cheaper, faster, we get better outcomes. But the veteran population, as an example, is not monolithic, right? We've got people coming out of the military, transitioning service members. We've got veterans. We've got people who have already been out there. We have guardsmen and reservists. So 1 foot in the civilian sector, 1 foot in the military world. And then amongst the veterans, we've got what we call high barrier to employment veterans, those who have bigger challenges that can get in the way of employment. It's not a huge percent of the overall population, but we're talking about those who are homeless. They may have addiction issues. They may have criminal record issues or bad paper issues. It takes a lot more time and effort to help these folks. And I think each one of those groups benefit from different types of help. The high barrier to employment vets, a lot more expensive because you got to take care of sort of Maslow's hierarchy of need, right. Food, clothing, shelter first. You could argue that government is the best organization to bring the resources it takes to do that. But as far as folks who are closer to the job market, closer to employers, knowing what the market wants and being able to more agilely change how they prepare vets, it's no question it's a nonprofit sector. I think we can work together better. One of the things that I've been beating a drum on for 5-6 years now is at the point of transition during that mandatory transition assistance program or transition GPS, we still do a terrible job of connecting transitioning service members with the resources in the communities. Yeah. We literally, the state of the art still, unfortunately, in most places is they fill out their DD 214 and that information on there in terms of your next address is going to be is probably good for about a month. And, gets handed from DOD to the VA, from the VA to the state VAs, and about a year and a half, 2 years later, you get a postcard in the mail at that address with the VA offering you to help you. And that's crazy in this market. Yep. One reason why during TAP, we couldn't survey every single attendee. So 99.9% of folks leaving the military go through that and say, where are you going? What are your needs, unmet needs going to be there? We walk them through the survey. We let them opt in. So the PI worries of the Department of Defense lawyers are taken care of. And we connect them with resources in the communities they're heading to. We skate to where the puck's going to be. Yeah, I love it. It was 2 years ago. So I think that's the key, honestly, to helping vets. And by the way, if you can intervene before they're even out of the military, a lot of the bad stuff that happens to folks will never happen. So true. The private, the PFC who comes out and says, I got $3,000 in the bank, I'm good to go. I've never had so much money. Well, they get out, they move to LA, which has the largest concentration of vets in the nation, LA County. And they're asked for first month's rent, current month's, last month's rent, security deposit. Oh crap, I'm out of money. Right. That's what's happening. And we've got to get ahead of that. We got to get left of that transition. And I think, government could help make that happen. I think, honestly, the current Department of Labor vets leadership really gets it. And I think they're making positive changes there, more than I've ever seen. So fingers crossed that this is going to work out.
Oh, I love it. Well, Dan, I mean, this is so good. All this stuff is so good. And I know we could just keep going on this. And I just want to be sure that people get connected to you guys, because you guys are doing some pretty phenomenal work. You know, we do the stuff on the backside. We like to play, kind of covert. You guys are really out there making a lot of good stuff happen. How do people follow you, and really, what would you say is their next step to getting connected to Code?
Yeah, sure. If they want to follow me, it's at Dan for Vets on Twitter, DAN4 Vets. The Call of Duty Endowment, it's same thing, at Code, CODE for Vets. But most importantly, if they need help, go to our website, callofdutyendowment.org, and click on the Veteran Support tab. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram as well, if helpful.
Yeah, I love it, Dan. Thank you. For our audience, you guys, be sure to follow Dan. Be sure to check out Code. Great organization. I love these guys. I love who they support. As I've said, I've had Dan on my show a number of times because I believe in what they're doing, and I believe their approach is right. It's spot on. And for those of you guys that want to be part of a tribe, this is stuff that we're going to be promoting through our Facebook tribe, which is Profiting Through Transitions for Veterans and Military Families. Great interviews that we host there. And you can check out the other great interviews at operationmilitaryfamily.com as well. But Dan, again, thanks for being on the program. I appreciate it, my friend.
Thanks so much, Mike. It was great talking with you. Stay well and healthy and safe.
Absolutely. You too, my friend.
Take care.